There's a calmer way to enter a new year, one that doesn't start with pressure or self-correction. Buddhism points to that way, not as a belief, but as a practical posture for life. Everyone thinks a new year means a fresh start. Buddhism says that's exactly why most people start it wrong. You don't need more motivation, you don't need better resolutions, and you don't need to reinvent yourself overnight. Most people enter the year forcing happiness, forcing clarity, forcing change. And that pressure quietly turns into anxiety, frustration, and exhaustion. Buddhist wisdom teaches something radically different. You don't fix your life at the beginning of the year. You learn how to walk into it correctly. In the next minutes, you'll learn a calm, practical way to leave the past year without guilt, enter the new one without pressure, and carry less weight as you move forward. No rituals, no dogma, just guidance you can actually use. If that sounds like something you need right now, stay with me. And if you want more wisdom like this throughout the year, tap like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's begin. Every year as the new year approaches, people feel this quiet pressure in the chest, as if life were a room that must be perfectly clean before midnight arrives. Buddhist wisdom gently smiles at that idea and says, easy and breathe. There's no spiritual rule saying you must arrive whole, healed, or complete. Awakening doesn't begin with perfection, it begins with honesty. A Buddhist mentor would remind you that the mind loves deadlines. It turns dates into judgment, calendars into scorecards. But the Buddha never taught liberation through self-criticism or rushing. He taught awareness, noticing where you are without pushing it away. The new year isn't a test, it's simply another moment to wake up. Modern life convinces people they must fix everything before the year turns. Fix habits, relationships, money, emotions, all in one breath. From a Buddhist lens, that urgency is just another form of suffering. The practice is simpler. Stop fighting the present moment. Peace begins the instant resistance softens. Here's something practical a teacher might suggest before the year ends. Sit quietly for 5 minutes and ask, what am I tired of pretending about? Not what you failed at, but what you're done forcing. Write it down. No drama, no blame, just clarity. That alone is already a spiritual practice. In Buddhism, awakening isn't about becoming someone new overnight. It's about seeing clearly what you've been carrying unnecessarily. The new year doesn't demand transformation. It invites gentleness. You don't step into it as a project under construction. You step into it as a human being, breathing. A lot of anxiety comes from believing time is running out, but Buddhist teachings treat time like a flowing river, not a ticking bomb. Nothing meaningful ripens through force. Even enlightenment unfolds through patience and repetition. So why rush yourself? If someone feels behind in life, Buddhism doesn't shame them. It simply asks, can you be present with that feeling? Presence dissolves comparison faster than motivation ever could. And strangely, once comparison fades, energy returns naturally. That's when real change starts to feel possible. Try this simple action before the year closes. Choose one evening with no scrolling, no noise, no planning. Just tea, silence, and awareness of the body breathing. This isn't avoidance. It's reset at the nervous system level. Ancient practice, modern application. The new year becomes lighter when it's not treated as a deadline. Buddhist spirituality invites a softer entry, not a dramatic leap. No vows shouted into the void, no forced optimism. Just a quiet readiness to meet what comes with awareness. That's already enough. And once that pressure to arrive fixed dissolves, something opens. The heart becomes more curious, less defensive. Instead of demanding a perfect beginning, you allow a real one. That gentle shift sets the tone for everything that follows. And naturally, it leads to the next question. What should actually be left behind? As the year ends, many people try to close it with force. They rush to forgive, forget, erase, or rewrite what happened. Buddhist wisdom takes a different tone, slower, kinder, more human. It reminds us that closure doesn't come from rejection, it comes from understanding what actually happened. A mentor would say that leaving a year violently only creates echoes. Unprocessed emotions don't disappear just because the calendar changes. They wait quietly and resurface later in other forms. Buddhism teaches awareness before release. You can't let go of what you refuse to see. Modern culture loves dramatic endings and clean breaks, but the Buddhist path honors continuity over denial. The year didn't fail you. It taught you, sometimes harshly, and lessons don't need to be punished or praised. They need to be integrated. Here's a practical way to close the year gently. List 3 moments that disappointed you, without explanation or defense. Then ask, what did this reveal about my limits or needs? Not what went wrong, but what became clear. This turns pain into usable wisdom. Buddhism doesn't ask you to carry guilt into the new year. Guilt freezes the mind and keeps it circling the past. Instead, the practice is responsibility without self-attack, seeing clearly, learning honestly, and releasing softly. That's how cycles end cleanly. Many people confuse gentleness with weakness, but Buddhist teachings see gentleness as emotional intelligence. Only a calm mind can release without clinging. Only a stable heart can look back without collapsing. Violence belongs to fear, not to wisdom. If the year held loss, mistakes, or unfinished chapters, that's human. A mentor would never ask you to smile through that. He would ask you to bow inwardly to what was real. Respecting your experience is part of spiritual maturity. Nothing needs to be erased to be released. Try this simple action in the final days of the year. Choose one regret and write a short letter of acknowledgement to yourself. No apology, no justification, just recognition. Then close the page and breathe deeply 3 times. This is how the nervous system learns safety. When a year is left gently, it stops haunting the next one. There's less reactivity, less projection, less unconscious repetition. Buddhist practice isn't about starting fresh by force. It's about arriving lighter by awareness. And that lightness creates space. Once the old year is honored instead of attacked, something shifts. The mind becomes quieter, more receptive. You stop dragging yesterday into tomorrow. And without that weight, a deeper question emerges naturally. What are you still carrying that was never yours to begin with? As a new year approaches, many people feel tired without knowing why. Not physically tired, but emotionally burdened. Buddhist teaching would say the weight isn't from effort alone. It's from carrying things that were never meant to stay. Expectations, roles, and stories that expired long ago. A mentor would gently point out how easily the mind adopts burdens. Other people's hopes, fears, disappointments quietly become yours. Over time, identity forms around what should be maintained. Buddhism calls this attachment, but in modern life it feels like obligation. And obligation, when unconscious, becomes suffering. The Buddha taught that suffering often comes from mistaking ownership. Just because something touches your life doesn't mean it belongs there. Emotions pass through. Situations arise. Relationships change. Wisdom is knowing what to hold and what to release. Awakening begins with discernment, not endurance. Here's a practical reflection for the end of the year. Ask yourself, what am I maintaining out of fear? Fear of disappointing, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being alone. Write down one expectation you keep performing. Seeing it clearly weakens its grip. Buddhism never asks you to abandon care or compassion. It asks you to abandon unnecessary self-sacrifice. There's a difference between kindness and self-erasure. Carrying what isn't yours slowly drains joy and clarity. The new year invites correction, not guilt. Modern spirituality sometimes glorifies carrying more healing, more responsibility, more emotional labor. Buddhist wisdom quietly counters that with balance. The middle way is not about doing less. It's about doing what's true. Anything else becomes noise. A mentor might say, notice what you rehearse daily. Thoughts repeated become burdens reinforced. Old arguments replayed, imagined conversations, unresolved scenes. These consume energy without offering insight. Letting go begins with stopping repetition. Try this simple action before the year ends. Choose one recurring thought that drains you. Each time it appears, label it softly. Not mine anymore. No fighting, no suppression, just recognition. This trains the mind toward release. When unnecessary burdens fall away, space returns, breathing deepens, reactions soften, perspective widens. Buddhism doesn't promise a lighter year. It teaches how to walk lighter through whatever arrives. That skill compounds over time. As weight drops, something important becomes possible. You start noticing what truly deserves attention. Energy stops leaking into outdated roles. And naturally, a new question forms beneath the surface. What does it mean to enter the year ahead with intention, not expectation? As the year winds down, many people assume closure must be dramatic. Long reflections, emotional speeches, grand rituals. Buddhist practice goes in the opposite direction. It values simplicity, repetition, and sincerity over intensity. Closing a year is less about ceremony and more about clarity. A mentor would say that the mind closes cycles through awareness, not effort. When attention settles, things naturally complete themselves. This is why Buddhist traditions rely on small, consistent practices, not because they are symbolic, but because they work. The nervous system understands rhythm better than motivation. Here is a simple practice adapted for modern life. Choose one quiet moment in the last days of the year. Sit comfortably without music, candles, or distractions. Let the body feel heavy and supported. Nothing mystical, just presence. Bring the year to mind as a whole, not as a list. Notice what sensations arise. Tightness, warmth, fatigue, relief. Don't analyze them. Don't name them as good or bad. Buddhism teaches that awareness itself is already healing. What is seen clearly no longer needs to shout. If emotions surface, let them come without commentary. No fixing, no storytelling, no judgment. This is where most people interrupt the process. But staying still is the practice. Stillness allows completion without force. After a few minutes, place a hand gently on the chest. Silently acknowledge, this year has passed through me. Not this year was good or this year was bad. Just passed through. Impermanence felt directly becomes wisdom. This practice works because it trains non-resistance. The mind learns it doesn't need to replay or suppress. Buddhist psychology understands closure as digestion. You don't rush digestion, you allow it. Time and attention do the rest. To ground this practice, follow it with a simple action. Clean a small physical space as a drawer, a desk, a bag. Do it slowly, without multitasking. Physical order gently mirrors mental order. This is ancient wisdom expressed practically. Many people underestimate practices like this because they seem too simple, but simplicity is precisely why they reach deeper layers. No belief required, no identity adopted, just direct experience. That's the heart of Buddhist spirituality. Once the year is closed this way, something settles. There's less urgency to define what comes next. Space opens naturally, without pressure, and in that space, a new orientation begins to form. How to step forward without demanding happiness. As the new year arrives, happiness is often treated like a requirement. Smile more. Feel grateful. Be positive. Start fresh. Buddhist wisdom gently steps in and lowers the volume. It reminds us that demanding happiness creates tension. Peace grows more easily when it isn't forced. A mentor would explain that happiness, when chased, becomes fragile. It depends on circumstances lining up just right. But life rarely cooperates with our scripts. Buddhism doesn't reject joy. It releases the demand for it. That difference changes everything. In Buddhist practice, well-being comes from acceptance, not control. When the mind stops arguing with reality, energy returns. This doesn't mean giving up or becoming passive. It means responding instead of reacting. That's a skill you can train. Here's a simple shift to apply as the year begins. Replace the question, "Will this make me happy?" with, "Is this aligned with clarity and kindness?" Happiness often follows alignment naturally. It doesn't need to be invited loudly. Modern culture sells happiness as a constant emotional state. Buddhism sees it as a byproduct of wise action. Some days are light, others are heavy, both are allowed. Resisting that rhythm creates suffering. Respecting it builds resilience. A mentor might say, don't make happiness your job. Make presence your job instead. Notice the breath, the body, the moment at hand. Joy appears quietly when attention is grounded. It doesn't announce itself. If the new year brings challenges, that doesn't mean you failed. It means you're alive and engaged. Buddhist teachings normalize difficulty without dramatizing it. They offer steadiness, not guarantees. That steadiness is deeply comforting. Try this practice during the first week of the year. At the end of each day, name one moment of simple presence. Not achievement, presence. A breath noticed, a walk felt, a meal enjoyed. This retrains the mind gently. When happiness isn't demanded, the heart relaxes. There's more room for patience, humor, and humility. Life feels less like a performance and more like participation. Buddhism points toward this ease again and again. It's subtle, but powerful. Entering the year this way creates a quiet confidence. You're no longer bargaining with life for good feelings. You're meeting it as it comes, awake and willing. And from that posture, something more grounded becomes possible. Setting direction without trapping yourself in expectation. As a new year begins, many people write expectations disguised as goals. They decide how life should unfold, step by step. Buddhist wisdom gently interrupts that habit. It reminds us that expectations are just control wearing a hopeful mask. Intentions, on the other hand, leave room for reality. A mentor would explain that expectations demand outcomes. They tighten the mind and create quiet pressure. Intentions point direction without force. They say, "This is how I wish to walk," not "this is what must happen." That subtle difference protects inner peace. In Buddhist spirituality, intention matters more than results. Action guided by clarity plants good seeds. Even when outcomes change, life remains uncertain. That part is non-negotiable. But intention gives shape to how uncertainty is met. It turns chaos into practice. Here's a practical way to set intentions for the year. Instead of writing goals like, "I must succeed," choose qualities. For example, patience in conversations, honesty in choices, presence in work. These can be practiced on any day, regardless of circumstance. That makes them powerful. Expectations often collapse when reality pushes back. Then disappointment follows, quickly turning into self-judgment. Intentions adapt. They bend without breaking. You can return to them after mistakes or setbacks. Buddhism values this return more than perfection. A mentor might say, "Ask how you want to meet life, not how much you want to achieve." Meeting life with steadiness, curiosity, and care changes outcomes indirectly. But more importantly, it changes experience directly. That's where freedom lives. Modern culture celebrates rigid planning. Buddhism respects responsiveness instead. Plans belong to the mind. Responsiveness belongs to awareness. The new year will surprise you. It always does. Intentions keep you oriented when plans fall apart. Try this simple action at the start of the year. Choose one intention for each area: mind, relationships, and daily life. Keep them short and human, not poetic. Return to them when stress appears. This builds continuity without pressure. Living with intention softens the inner dialogue. You stop asking, "Am I winning?" and start asking, "Am I present?" That shift reduces comparison and restores energy. Buddhist practice quietly trains this perspective. Over time, it becomes natural. When intention replaces expectation, the year feels less threatening. You're no longer negotiating with the future. You're simply showing up with awareness. And from that grounded posture, another question emerges on its own: how to face what you can't predict without fear. As a new year opens, uncertainty often arrives quietly. Questions about health, money, relationships, and purpose hover in the background. Buddhist wisdom doesn't promise safety or predict outcomes. It offers something more reliable: stability of mind. Fear loses power when awareness is steady. A mentor would explain that fear is built from imagined futures. The body reacts to stories the mind tells. Buddhism trains attention to return to what is actually happening now. Not tomorrow, not worst-case scenarios. Presence weakens fear at its source. Uncertainty isn't a mistake in life's design. It's a constant feature of existence. Buddhist teachings don't aim to eliminate it. They aim to change your relationship to it. That shift turns fear into curiosity. Here's a practical practice for moments of anxiety about the year ahead. Notice the physical sensation of fear in the body. Tight chest, shallow breath, restless energy. Stay with the sensation without feeding the story. The body calms when it feels seen. Many people try to face uncertainty by controlling more planning, more predicting, more reassurance. Buddhist wisdom suggests the opposite. Strengthen inner grounding. A grounded mind doesn't need certainty to function. It adapts naturally. A mentor might say, train the part of you that meets change, not the part that avoids it. Meditation, mindful walking, conscious breathing, these aren't escapes. They are rehearsals for reality. Each practice builds trust in your capacity. If the year brings challenges, fear doesn't mean weakness. It means care and investment. Buddhism teaches compassion toward fear, not resistance. When fear is allowed, it softens. When fought, it multiplies. Try this simple action when uncertainty spikes. Place both feet on the ground and name 3 things you can see. Then notice 3 sounds. This anchors awareness in the present moment. Fear cannot survive sustained presence. Facing the unknown becomes easier with repetition. Each time you meet uncertainty without panic, confidence grows. Not confidence that things will go well, confidence that you can meet whatever comes. That's real security. When fear loosens its grip, attention turns outward again. Energy once trapped in worry becomes available. And in that openness, something becomes clear. What kind of guidance actually helps you walk forward? The quiet wisdom that comes from story, not strategy. Buddhist teachings often use stories not to impress, but to reveal. Simple scenes, ordinary people, quiet realizations. A mentor might begin a New Year message with a short story, not to escape reality, but to see it more clearly. Stories bypass resistance and speak directly to the heart. There is an old Buddhist story about a monk who felt he had failed his practice. Years passed, and he believed he hadn't become calmer or wiser. At the end of one year, he went to his teacher feeling discouraged. He expected correction or disappointment. Instead, he received a question. The teacher asked, "When you began, were you aware of your impatience?" The monk paused and realized he hadn't been. He used to act without noticing his own reactions. Now he saw them clearly, even when they arose. The teacher smiled and said, "Then you have begun." The story carries a quiet but powerful message. Beginning again doesn't always look like improvement. Sometimes it looks like awareness replacing ignorance. Buddhism values seeing over fixing. That shift alone changes the path. A mentor would explain that many people mistake awareness for failure. They notice more mistakes and assume they are getting worse. In reality, they are waking up. You can't change what you can't see. The new year amplifies this illusion. This story applies directly to modern life. You may notice impatience at work, tension in relationships, restlessness in silence. That doesn't mean the year ahead will be harder. It means your sensitivity has grown. Growth often feels uncomfortable before it feels peaceful. Buddhism doesn't measure progress by how little you struggle. It measures it by how honestly you meet struggle. Each moment of recognition is already a beginning. No fireworks required, no announcement needed. Try reflecting on this story as the year begins. Ask yourself, what am I noticing now that I didn't before? Not to judge it, but to acknowledge it. This reframes awareness as progress, and progress as presence. The new year often pressures people to reinvent themselves. Buddhist stories gently undo that demand. They suggest that beginning again is subtle and ongoing. Each breath is already a restart. Each moment offers entry. As the story settles, something becomes clear. You don't need a dramatic transformation to begin anew. You only need the willingness to notice. And from that noticing, guidance naturally emerges. What actually deserves your attention in the year ahead? As the excitement of a new year settles, attention begins to scatter. Plans multiply, priorities compete, and energy spreads thin. Buddhist wisdom gently calls attention back to what matters, not what is urgent, loud, or impressive, but what sustains clarity over time. A mentor would say that life improves when attention becomes selective. Not everything deserves equal energy. Buddhism teaches wise effort, investing where it nourishes. Many frustrations come from misdirected focus. Awareness helps reorganize it. According to Buddhist teaching, relationships matter deeply, not in quantity but in presence. Listening fully, speaking honestly, and leaving space for silence. These are everyday practices of awakening. They cost nothing and change everything. Another area that matters is how you treat your own mind. Constant stimulation fragments attention. Buddhism encourages moments of stillness, even brief ones. 5 mindful breaths can interrupt a day of autopilot. Consistency matters more than duration. Ethical action also plays a quiet but central role. Not morality as punishment, but as alignment. Choosing honesty, restraint, and care simplifies life. When actions align with values, the mind rests easier. This reduces inner conflict. A mentor might remind you that rest is not laziness. Exhaustion clouds judgment and compassion. Buddhist practice respects the body as part of the path. Sleep, nourishment, and movement support awareness. Ignoring them creates unnecessary suffering. Work and purpose matter too, but not as identity. Buddhism warns against tying worth to productivity. Work is an expression, not a measure of being. Approached mindfully, it becomes practice. Approached compulsively, it becomes bondage. Try this practical reflection early in the year. Ask, what if nurtured would make everything else easier? Often the answer is simple: attention, rest, or honesty. Start there instead of chasing complexity. Simplicity is a form of wisdom. When priorities align with what truly matters, life feels steadier. There's less chasing and less regret. Buddhist teaching doesn't promise success, it promises coherence. And coherence is deeply grounding. As clarity settles, energy becomes available for what's essential. Noise fades, direction sharpens, and naturally, attention turns toward how to walk forward, not with pressure or performance, but with calm, awareness, and willingness. As the new year fully opens, many people feel the urge to rush forward, to prove something, to make the year count. Buddhist wisdom gently slows that impulse. It suggests a different posture: calm, awake, and willing. A mentor would say that how you walk matters more than how fast. A hurried mind misses what's essential. An awake mind responds instead of reacts. Buddhism trains this quality through daily attention, not through pressure or performance. Calm doesn't mean absence of challenge. It means stability in the midst of movement. You can face difficult conversations, uncertain paths, and hard decisions calmly. Calm is a skill, not a mood, and skills can be trained. Being awake means noticing what's actually happening, not living on autopilot, not rushing past discomfort or pleasure. A Buddhist approach invites awareness in ordinary moments. That's where life actually unfolds. Willingness is the quiet courage to meet whatever arrives, not optimism, not pessimism, just openness. Buddhism doesn't ask you to predict the year. A mentor might say, don't demand that the year be easy. Demanding ease creates resistance. Instead, cultivate flexibility and steadiness. These qualities carry you through both light and heavy days. They don't depend on outcomes. Try anchoring the start of the year with one small commitment, not a goal, a practice. For example, 3 mindful breaths before responding when stressed, or 1 moment of silence each morning. Small practices shape large shifts. Modern life pushes constant self-improvement. Buddhist wisdom emphasizes self-relationship instead. How you speak to yourself matters. Gentleness sustains effort longer than harshness ever will. This makes the path sustainable. Walking this way, the year stops feeling like a test. It becomes a field of practice. Each day offers material for awareness, compassion, and clarity. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is outside the path. As this orientation settles, something quiet but strong takes root. You're no longer chasing the year or bracing against it. You're walking with it. And from that grounded place, the journey continues naturally, without pressure, but with purpose. As you step into this new year, Remember this. Nothing you heard here only works in theory. It works when life gets messy, when plans fail, when motivation fades. What would change if you stopped forcing yourself to be ready and started walking forward with awareness instead? What if this year wasn't about proving anything, but about carrying less, reacting less, and seeing more clearly? You don't need to rush. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to notice how you show up, today, tomorrow, and the next day. If this message gave you clarity, take a moment and ask yourself, what is one thing you can release this year? And what is one quality you want to practice instead? Share that in the comments. It helps anchor the intention. And if you want to keep learning how ancient wisdom applies to modern life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We'll keep walking this path together, calmly, awake and willing.